and where a tumor might be present? All right, so here's a situation. Thyroid hormone levels are elevated. TSH levels are elevated. TRH levels are elevated. No tumor. What's the problem? Does this individual have hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism? So, this person hates fish, doesn't like salt, doesn't eat any canned goods or cheese. All right? They eat only leafy vegetables grown in a soil with very little sodium. They're allergic to iodine, whatever you want to say. So, in their bloodstream, they have very little iodine. Cell is still making thyroglobulin with tyrosine molecule, amino acids inserted into it. When it gets to the surface here, thyroid peroxidase may not be able to add any or may only add one. So we may have a situation that looks like this. Okay? That doesn't work. It's inactive. It will not have any effect on the metabolic activity of the individual. So their symptoms will be hypothyroidism, even though, well, let's see what happens. So the circulating blood gets from the thyroid up to the hypothalamus, and it detects that as low levels of thyroid hormone. Even though the levels, the numbers of the tyrosine molecules might be normal, without the iodide on there, it doesn't count. So the hypothalamus reacts by increasing thyroid-releasing hormone, which gets to the anterior pituitary and causes it to make more TSH, which gets to the thyroid and causes it to become more active and make more thyroglobulin. But it doesn't change anything because it doesn't add any iodine to the situation, so it just keeps going more and more, and the thyroid gland gets bigger and bigger, but they're hypothyroid. Okay? Because the increased amounts of thyroid hormone are ineffective. So I knew there was an error in your lecture notes, but the list of symptoms was so long, I guess I didn't get all the way to the end of it. So if you will look on the symptoms of hyper and hypothyroidism, on page what? 41. Down at the end of hyper, it has the word goiter. That should be with hypo. Remember, we're talking about the effects on the metabolic activity. So whether we don't have any...
it's already there.
Move it up to hypo.
Move it to...
Oh, well, cross it out then from hyper, sorry.
It already says it there. Possible goiter.
Yeah, the goiter should be gone from hyper. So if you don't have enough T3, the body's metabolic activity slows down. And the symptoms correlate with that. Individuals are cold because we get a lot of our heat from splitting ATP, all right, in the muscles or in other organs. 50%, when we break down glucose, 50% of the energy in a glucose molecule is not stored as ATP, it releases heat. If you're not breaking down ATP, you're not getting that heat. So these individuals are often cold. Constipation of their muscles, of their digestive tract. are sluggish. Their hair is dull, it doesn't grow very well. They have trouble thinking. They don't do well in school. If they develop this in infancy, it's permanent. Right? They have brain damage. Even if they develop, I've had a few students, a couple of students have had it. One had been already under treatment for about 8 months, and she was still struggling. It's not just an instantaneous cure to start taking thyroid replacements. On the reverse side, too much active thyroid level is hyperthyroidism, and the effects are the opposite. These people can't seem to keep the weight off. You know, they're constantly drinking milkshakes. They're nervous. I said hypodiarrhea, constipation, but hyper is diarrhea. Things are moving too fast. They do not become geniuses, okay, unfortunately. While they may not be able to think very well, if they have hyperthyroidism, it's not like their IQ jumps 100 points either. And my son was looking over some notes that I was making last night, so he was asking about it, and I was telling him the difference between hyper and hypothyroidism. He is not a morning person. He gets up okay, but he is a grump. I mean, he will not even look at you. And if you say good morning, he'll go, huh? And so, even in the afternoon, if I say, hey, Will, he'll go look at me and go, that's all I get. Half-inch movement of the chin, acknowledging that I said hi. So I told him that people that are hypothyroid are sluggish. And I go, that doesn't apply to you just because you're grumpy and slow to move in the morning. He probably has about 2% body fat. I said, so that doesn't fit you, all right? You would be more on the hyperthyroidism type. So when you think about, it's easy to pick up, all right? Not enough energy, too much energy. Are people that have hyperthyroidism are hot all the time. They never seem to eat enough. So which of the diseases illustrated below is also known as a form of hypothyroidism? The goiter. Now it seems to be a bit of a paradox because we have this overactive thyroid gland to make the goiter. It's not a tumor, it's cells that are getting too big. It's not like we have an increase in the number of cells. Each cell is 4 or 5 times bigger than it should be, the hyperplasia. And so that makes, I've seen images where it was like a cantaloupe size for the thyroid gland. Anybody know the treatment for that? It's easy. Not iodine. Okay? Now let's say they have hyperthyroidism. The first Mrs. Bush had Graves' disease and exophthalmic. You can have an exophthalmic goiter as well with this from a different cause. But there's a edema behind the eye is what causes the eyeballs to bulge out like that. And so the treatment here is typically radioactive iodide particles, which lodge in the thyroid gland and locally are destructive. If they go overboard and kill off the thyroid gland completely, there are thyroid hormone supplements. Synthetic ones produced by pharmaceutical companies, or they're still available dried thyroid glands from farm animals that they grind up into a powder. All right, so that, but again, it takes a little while and it can be difficult to regulate that. All right, before we take a break and do lab, I want to mention the gland is on the posterior aspect of the thyroid. It's not inside, as you'll see in the microscope.